So Stranger Things and The Boys just both finished their 4th and 3rd seasons respectively, and in my opinion, both shows kind of go down a similar path as to their great build-up and then their kind of underwhelming season finales. This will be a spoiler review, so if you have not seen either seasons of these shows, then stop watching. So first, let's talk about Stranger Things. Season 4 of this show is, to me, the best one, even better than the first, and it's because they lean into the horror genre so much. They have much more mature storytelling going on and a more mature, just overall writing, that I think it really elevates the show to what it probably should have been in the 3rd season as well. But the storylines are the Hawkins storyline with Vecna killing these kids by like breaking their arms and necks and stuff. Then you have the California storyline, which kind of branches off into the California crew with Will, Mike, Jonathan, and Argyle, and then 11 sort of on her own with Dr. Brenner. And then you have the sort of Hawkins satanic panic thing going on, which is a little bit separate from the rest of the Hawkins stuff, just because we focus on characters who aren't main characters with a lot of those scenes. And then we have the Russia/Hopper storyline, which I think was a lot better than most people are giving it credit for. So first, let's talk about the Hawkins storyline, and mainly about the main characters, not the satanic panic stuff. But I think that the mystery going on here with what is happening to these kids that are being killed and how does it connect to the Upside Down, I think is really well done. I love a good mystery, and this was a great one, especially because it kind of brings back those feelings of those shows that took place in the same time frame, where you have these like mysterious murders going on in a town. There's like a serial killer out there, and I think that adding those kind of things along with the Upside Down works very well for this show and for the setting of Hawkins. This plotline also gets a +1 for me because Eddie Munson is just a fantastic character. I didn't like him at first, but after his first couple of scenes, he definitely grew on me, especially after the first episode. And I think that overall, how they dealt with this and how it fits into the actual setting of the 1980s is done very well. But I also think that the whole Hawkins basketball satanic panic 1980s kind of thing, I think it was probably the weakest storyline of the show. It wasn't bad per se, but it definitely left a lot to be desired. I think that if you either give more time with these basketball player characters that we follow trying to kill Eddie, I think that it would mean more if we spend a little bit more time focusing on them as who they are instead of just being their stereotypical characters. Or if you scrap the plot entirely, I think that you can give more time to your other plot lines, which are much better. This one just felt like an obstacle for the characters of Hawkins rather than an actual plot line that has meaning. So then we have the California plotline, which just split off into two separate ones after like the second or third episode, and I think that's where this plot actually gets good. It's off to a weak start because of the whole bullying thing that I'm just not really a fan of. I don't really care about these stereotypical bullying plot lines that seem to always pop up in this show at every point in every season. But once we get to 11 doing stuff by herself with Dr. Brenner, and there's no other characters that really matter besides her and Dr. Brenner, I feel like that's when this show really takes off in terms of build-up. And the Mike, Will, and Jonathan and Argyle stuff, I think is just like filler stuff. It's not bad, but it's filler until pretty much like the last episode of Volume 1. I will say though, the house shootout in episode 4 was pretty damn awesome. I love that scene. I'm just a sucker for one-take shootouts, I guess, but I thought that was done very well. Besides that, I'm not really a fan of the California plotline when it is in regards to Mike, Will, and Jonathan. Argyle, though, is a great character. I love that guy. Then we have the other part of the California plotline, and this one I think is a fantastic plotline, with 11 trying to get her powers back thanks to Dr. Brenner, and also trying to go into her past and learn more about that massacre that we were shown at the very start of the season. This storyline really works because it's not one of those where 11 gets her powers back within like 3 to 4 episodes. She has to really work to get her powers back. And not only that, this also ties into Vecna, which I think was a fantastic sort of underlying plot device to give backstory to the season's main villain, but also possibly the show's newest main villain beyond this point, because I do think that he will kind of take over the Mind Flayer as the show's overall main villain because of what we learn later on in the finale. But in general, a great job by showing bits and pieces of her past and the buildup to that massacre and what actually happened with that massacre, and also the connection with Vecna that 11 has, which I think makes for a much more interesting villain and a much more interesting protagonist in general. Then we have the Russia stuff, which I don't have a lot to say about, but I do definitely not mind this storyline. There are, though, a lot of plot conveniences that do happen along the way, which I think are also more so filler because they probably could have cut this down a little bit shorter, had it happen quicker. And overall, I did like the horror elements of the Russia storyline, as well as Hopper having more of a tougher time escaping the prison than you probably would typically have in shows like this. So that brings us to the finale, and this is where I think things get a little bit underwhelming. Both the show and the creators of the show make these big promises, specifically that characters will die, and they do not live up to this at all. There are a lot of moments in this season where things are pointing to either Jonathan, Steve, Max, or Eddie all dying, and Eddie is the only one who does, and he's a new character who is a great character. I think that us getting faked out on Max's death in the finale was really a pretty big disappointment, because the show promises that, oh, big things are going to happen, which big things do happen, but that characters will die, that there are actual stakes at play, that main characters aren't safe because of plot armor, and they pretty much lied to us. I really do feel like that if Max had died, that would have been a staple moment of the show, and things would be a lot different going forward, but instead, just a few scenes later, she's brought back alive by 11, which is interesting for 11's power thing going on, but beyond that, I really don't understand the point to bring her back unless they're like using her as some vessel for Vecna or something. But overall, the finale felt more like setup for the 5th season rather than a conclusion to this season's storylines, which is disappointing, because you can have a show where you not only conclude this season's storylines, but also have more to tell. That's possible, and it feels like they did not even try that here. And also, Dustin is the only person who even like recognizes that Eddie died. Just him and Eddie's uncle, that's it. Nobody else seems to care, which I think is really annoying, because all these characters spent so much time with him, and the only one who actually gives a crap is Dustin. And when he's talking to his uncle, it's weird because he talks about Eddie like he's a hero, when his uncle is supposed to believe that he died in an earthquake. So that scene made no sense. And the scene right after he dies, where they're like packing stuff into a car, and nobody even acknowledges or acts like somebody just died. It was just completely weird to me. And having a 2-hour, 30-minute runtime and not doing anything with that besides Dustin is kind of a slap in the face. It feels like this show promised that stakes were high for the first time in a while, and they actually weren't, because all the main characters are still alive. They did the same thing with Hopper in season 3, and although I don't know what's going to happen in the 5th season, I don't feel like any of these characters are in danger, and that's a problem. I will say though, Caleb McLaughlin, who plays Lucas, did a fantastic job in that finale, especially when Max is dying. That was a great job by him. That takes us to The Boys season 3, which I think has very similar problems in their own finale, but also really good build-up too. This season has a lot of good stuff going for it because all of these plot lines, I think, are pretty much equally as interesting as the others. And I do especially like that we spent very little time doing this thing where Newman is like leading the boys to do some useless stuff, killing these like C-list superheroes. I'm glad that we spent little time having her kind of controlling them and more focused on the build up to what happens in the finale. And what more is there to say about Homelander than Anthony Starr is just a star? If you guys have not seen Banshee, he is in that too as the main character. Aired a couple years back. I've watched it twice through fully a couple years ago after it fully came out. And that show is great. He is great in that. And wow, he is the star of this show as well. Jensen Ackles is absolutely fantastic as Soldier Boy. He's a great character. He's a shitty character, but he's a great character too. Very fun to watch, very funny at times. And I think that everything involving him up until the very end was very good. I also really did appreciate the character growth of Maeve, who decides to say, I guess, screw everything. I'm going to help everybody else besides Homelander, do anything that I can to bring him down, including giving Butcher and Huey the Temp V, which I think was a really good plot point to introduce for both characters because it shows you how they're so different but also so alike. They both want to use it, but Huey is more addicted, whereas Butcher is doing it because he just wants to kill them all. And I think that's a really good job of showing how they're both similar but also different. I also really enjoyed Starlight's character arc in this show, or in this season, when she goes from not being able to really do anything to fight Homelander to using one of her biggest weapons, which is her social media presence, to get her out of her current situation, but also to step up to Homelander and use it as a weapon by itself. I think that was a really good storyline. And I also like Mother Milk's storyline, where he's trying to navigate being a father to his daughter, where he also has this real piece of shit as the stepfather to his daughter, and how that kind of takes a turn towards the end, I think was done very well, despite the commentary being very on the nose, which is more than it usually is for this show, but I still did like it because the commentary in this show is almost always on point. Then you have A-Train, who has been given so many chances throughout this entire show to have a redemption. It feels like that slowly we are actually going to get to that point, because I do like the storyline of him having to deal with Blue Hawk and how he's not so good at doing the best thing in certain spots where he kills Blue Hawk, but he probably shouldn't have. I mean, I have no problem with it, but for his brother, he wanted something more rather than just killing Blue Hawk, to have something of, like, I guess, true justice going on. And I like that, despite it being a little bit corny in the finale where he like gets knocked over and says like, don't touch me. That felt a little bit too corny to me. But beyond that point, I do like A-Train's growth and him trying to realize what he feels and what everything going around him means to him, and not just to, I guess, Homelander, or to just being this selfish prick. He actually is changing, which I do like. But back to Huey's storyline, I love this. I think this was probably my favorite storyline besides the whole Soldier Boy one in this season, because it's a really good commentary on insecurity for men who have partners who are just more successful than they are, or I guess like more powerful in general than they are, and they don't feel like they are the, I guess, quote unquote man in the relationship. And I think that him having to try and shrug off this addiction to Temp V this season was a really good job of showcasing that. And Kimiko kind of has like an opposite character arc as to what Huey has, because Kimiko wants to lose her powers. She does, but then she wants to go back because she wants to protect Frenchie. Not because she wants the powers per se, she likes the power of the powers, but she wants to protect the person that she loves and that also loves her. And I think that was also done very well. So then the finale. And the finale, just like Stranger Things, promises a lot and does not really deliver on what it promised or what the creators promised on Twitter and other social media. We were led to believe that characters were actually at risk, and just like Steve in Stranger Things, Frenchie seems like he was on the road to death, and I'm glad that we didn't kill him, but nobody even died besides Black Noir, and his death was so underwhelming. It does make sense, but I, like many others, wanted more from his death. It felt way too quick. Then you have the whole Ryan plot going on here as well, which I think was mostly done well, because it does mean that what Butcher did earlier this season, what he said to Ryan, pretty much cutting off ties with him, that actually had consequences, and pretty big ones at that. I liked pretty much everything surrounding that portion of the finale, except when Butcher just switches from trying to kill Homelander to trying to kill Soldier Boy. It makes sense again, but I don't necessarily buy that he has more love for Ryan than hate for Homelander. Then we have the whole Starlight moment in the finale where she starts to fly and has all this light coming out thanks to what Huey did, and then all she does is knock over Soldier Boy. I can't be the only person that said, "That's it?" And then he breaks out of their attempt to use the gas on him. So all in all, that was useless, I gotta say. Then afterwards, Maeve seems to sacrifice herself when she tackles Soldier Boy out of the building, and then he does that chest blow up thing, and then moments later, she's still alive. So the only person who died is Black Noir, and Maeve does lose her powers, and maybe she's done with the show. I'm not really sure. They probably are going to bring her back and have her get killed or something later on in the fourth season, but I think I like it better if Maeve dies there, because it's a really good death moment. It shows that nobody's really perfectly safe besides Butcher and Huey for the most part, and instead she's alive and she gets to go live off happily ever after, which, that's nice, but it felt underwhelming to me. And on top of that, Soldier Boy is also still alive, so we're pretty much back to square one with the start of this season. The only difference is that they actually know who blew up the heads of Congress, and it's Newman, and now they have to go kill her next season. So I don't know, it just like Stranger Things, it felt more like setup for the next season than concluding plot lines from this season, which I think is really misleading for the creators of both shows to insinuate that there are actual stakes, that there are actual people at risk here, when really there weren't. So that's why I felt kind of let down by these finales, is because they both had such great build-up, such large promises, and in the end, it's just more setup for supposedly bigger things to happen in the next season. So that's how these shows are similar, and that's why they are both underwhelming in the end. Comment down below what you thought, like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Take care.